Hello, my name is Kassidy Butterworth, and I will be presenting my application for the Mills-Peninsula Scholarship. I am completing my master's degree in the Art Therapy graduate program at Notre Dame de Namur University, and I want to share with you my time spent as an art therapy trainee working with elementary to middle school children in San Mateo County. The title of my presentation is called Finding His Voice, Using Bowen Family Systems Theory with a Fifth Grade Boy. My practicum site was an elementary middle school hybrid in San Mateo County. The student teacher ratio is 24 to 8. This school focuses on the whole child, meaning focusing on the mind, body, and spirit rather than just academic performance. My role as an art therapy trainee involved providing individual counseling services to students grades 1 through 8. I was on site 3 times a week and provided counseling to students once a week for 45-minute sessions. The school system involves the participation of the principal, the teachers, the parents, and the office administrative staff. It was my role to make sure I was communicating with each individual involved in the betterment of the client while maintaining confidentiality. In addition, I was responsible for keeping client progress notes and artwork completely confidential while maintaining adequate art supplies. I met with my supervisor individually every week for 1 hour and received group supervision as well. Lastly, I was a mandated reporter and trained to detect and report suspected child abuse. Now I will review the theoretical orientation that I use as a therapist and how that influenced my work with my client. Dr. Murray Bowen was a scholar, researcher, clinician, teacher, and writer. He was the first family therapist to publicly discuss the use of his own family of origin in his work. The influence of psychoanalysis shaped Bowen's theory by placing emphasis on repressed material, gaining insight, and the goal of achieving an individuated self. He developed the concept of family of origin exploration. This looks at a person's attempt to examine and change the patterns of interaction that occur in his or her family. In introducing Bowen family systems theory, I will briefly explain some key terms and core ideas. Individuality and togetherness, both emotional forces, drive us when we seek to be autonomous or when we seek approval and acceptance. Unresolved emotional attachment is based on the child's ability to separate themselves from their parents' emotional dependency. Differentiation means an individual's ability to separate oneself from familial anxiety and external stressors with minimal emotional reactivity. People's varying reactions to anxiety is a result of their own levels of differentiation, which can result in chronic anxiety and physical illnesses. This theory uses a transgenerational approach which looks at the family dynamics across more than 2 generations and also views the symptoms that the client exhibits are an expression of habits and patterns adopted by the family. Now I will be introducing my client, Caesar, which is an alias for confidentiality purposes, a Latino 10-year-old boy in 5th grade and an only child. He comes from a working class family who was in the midst of conflict and separation. At the beginning of treatment, Caesar was caught in the middle of a custody battle between his mother and father. During the time I have been seeing Caesar, his mom has gone to jail 2 to 3 times, and Caesar moved back in with his dad in his grandparents' apartment. Caesar's teacher referred him to therapy for the following reasons: difficulty concentrating, withdrawn or isolating behavior, difficulty being assertive, often appearing anxious, frequently expressing fear and or worry, often appearing sad, more tearful than peers, demonstrating low self-esteem, and difficulty making friends. Caesar was experiencing depression and anxiety and was being used as the third person in his mother's and father's relationship as a method of communication or ways to ease the tension, also known as triangulation. Caesar's familial system lacks clear boundaries, which made him feel as if he cannot be a child while he was continuously swept up in the drama between mother and father. Through being unable to differentiate from his family, his strengths and sense of self have been consumed by the custody battle and loneliness. In developing my treatment plan for Caesar, I came up with these short-term goals: develop a working counseling relationship by providing art materials and allowing my client the space in the room and on paper to actively communicate through art making. explore family of origin and intergenerational issues such as triangles and boundaries, and looking at familial interactions in the art directives, and identify level of differentiation and anxiety within the family system by observing the form and content in the client's art. Right after my first session with Caesar, I met with his father for the first time. The father had just come from a court case which ruled that Caesar must go home with his mom and live there as his main residence. The principal and I were in the room as the father told Caesar the news. After the father left, Caesar was given time to process this upsetting news with me. I witnessed his art making as he released his fury and sadness in tears and in his frenzied drawing. Caesar began drawing weapons as a defense against his overpowering emotions. Upon inquiry, he explained that they were anger, rage, and sadness. I paid attention to these weapons as it gave me a clue how Caesar related to his world and how he found protection amidst the chaos. Before this session, the father told Caesar he needed to be nicer to his mother, who often neglected her son. In the top left, you can see he drew his brain with different colors representing different emotions. Immediately, you notice how he compartmentalizes all his emotions and how they all seem to control him. Again, this is a clue to his lack of differentiation and sense of helplessness. You see the black line running through the brain, which represents betrayal. On the bottom right, you can see an image of him being, quote, stabbed in the back by his father because he told him he needs to be nicer to his mother, which caused instability within the triangle between him, his mom, and his dad. I allowed Caesar to use clay, a more fluid medium that can elicit deeper emotional expression, and he created a self portrait. Caesar created this figure holding a large staff. Upon inquiry, he related that this was his, quote, weapon of protection, which gave him, quote, godlike powers. I noticed the mouth, which almost looks like it's screaming. I wondered if this was Caesar's attempt at individuation and finally reclaiming his voice and his power. I chose this directive to give Caesar an opportunity to have his own space, something he did not have at home. In creating this space, it allowed him to explore different ways of differentiating from his familial fusion, which has caused instability and chaos within his family system. He loved exploring with the colors, allowing his creativity to be expressed. In his space that he created, he told me the blue figure was himself, while the yellow and orange figure was me. I believe that my presence in Caesar's space is a tangible reminder of the confidence he gained in sessions, the personal strengths he was able to identify, and how he found his voice in his art. The initial goals I set out for Caesar in my treatment plan were met, which helped him develop the tools he needed to succeed in his home and school environment. In addition, he was able to identify some of his strengths, as depicted in the image on the right. Thank you for your interest in my application for the Mills-Peninsula Scholarship about art therapy and Bowen family systems theory with elementary school children. I have included references here if you wish to learn more about topics included in my presentation. Thank you.